Installation came around 1999 or so. Simon and I were pretty much at odds on every subject except music. Our schedules didn't really get together. I was more of a morning person, he was more of a night person, or I should say a 24-hour kind of person. And but we always like ever since the AKA Inc. days, we always had this idea about making some kind of a sound installation or something. I don't want to sound too pretentious, but like, again, you gotta step back a couple of years, decades. And what happened is that he actually had access to a one of those practice studios where bands go in and they practice, and I think he was, I'm not sure, I didn't ask too many questions, but we would go in there for about a month. He had access for a month. We would go in there whenever the band that rented the place weren't there. There was a drum kit there, there was a broken double bass and a viola, there was a nice soundboard, the nicest soundboard I think I ever saw that I had access to at the time. A couple of amplifiers and little gadgets here and there, and the idea was that back in the AKA Inc. days, we were very comfortable with Scratch as a trio to actually do these like sound art installations recorded live, direct to tape, but we didn't have anything, we never actually explored the idea of actually having a permanent setup which would enable us to pretty much create something that was cohesive and was able to be redone in the future. But back in those days we only had about a month, and out of those months we only actually maybe went to the studio 2-3 days a week for a few hours at a time. And a lot of those days we spent pretty much lounging around trying to figure out what we actually wanted to do, but in the spirit of doing things just in the sake of doing them, we actually recorded some bits here and there. I know Simon on his end ended up recording some stuff by himself. I actually had some ideas that I brought into the whole concept. And basically what we ended up doing was 4 segments, the main one being, I think, a 20-25 minute rhythmic piece which was set on a click track on the multi-track, which enabled us to always come back on cue and never really deviate from, without actually having to use a drum machine or anything like that. In fact, the idea was to pull ourselves away from what we were doing at the time and trying to explore something that was a little bit more einstürzen den new button, okay? Pretty much. We were pretty much like always been fans of like their earlier work, and we wanted to do something that, because we knew there was no way we could ever like do this live. And what we ended up doing was record a lot of stuff, which was pretty much in all sorts of pieces here and there. We never really finished it. I think maybe the finished product ended up using, I would say, about 40% of that month's time we had in the studio. And I know Simon did about a 4 to 6 minute thing just by himself sometime in the future when we stopped seeing each other. And when we met up again by sheer accident around 2012, 2013 or so, he actually brought the idea back. He says, listen, we have like a lot of things like we've never finished, and he was really adamant about that. So we pretty much went back, but separately, each in our own direction, trying to revisit what the idea was originally, what we wanted to do achieve sonically. And we even explored tape loops, like old-fashioned tape loops, never using computers and stuff like that. Digital delay effect pedals, other types of effect pedals, and it pretty much ended up a big fine mess. I think I ended up with over 2 hours worth of material that I inherited in 2015. And I knew that the piece in itself was pretty much only a matter of trying to piece the pieces together, which pretty much meant squeezing in the 4 parts into one bit, big long bit. I of course added a few touches here and there. Some stuff is like 100% Simon that I left untouched. And that pretty much is what happened with installation. So there was a lot of different types of musical instruments and devices used. I still had access to an acoustic piano back then, which we used. We had access to a junkyard at one point, so we snuck in, with the 4-track multi-recorder, and we decided to record as much as we could with whatever was over there. But that was sonically interesting. a lot of scraping of objects together amplified, a lot of like natural sounds too. We didn't end up processing whatever sounded interesting at the base. We never processed it enough, and what was really processed were things that we just couldn't get away with. For example, something that we both had an interest back in 2013 or 14 or something like that is the idea of using the amplifier as a source, a sound medium in itself. And we weren't sure how we were going to use that, so we ended up miking mics themselves next to a speaker and then controlling the feedback. And of course that was heavily processed, and we were able to actually do some kind of a rhythmic pattern with it, which we incorporated in installation number 1. And in the end, I just took like the raw audio files, turned it, I put it in a WAV file for the computer. That was it. Did a mastering job, which was very basic, and that's it. Installation. Simon Sinister, rest in peace, and of course myself. That's it.